Good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for finding time to be with us. Today, the show is Diaspora Dispatches. We get to bring you the latest news from across the continent of Africa. My name is Miriam Ogotu, and it is a pleasure to have you on board this afternoon, the 16th of January 2022. And here are the latest news from across the continent. We start with Nigeria, where a Roman Catholic priest has been killed by armed gunmen at his parish in northern Nigeria in the village of Kaf in Koro, Niger State. The body of Father Isaac Archie was found in the charred ruins of the building. Another priest, Father Collins Ume, was shot as he tried to escape the blaze and was later taken to the hospital. He told local reporters that Father Archie was shot dead by the gunmen, who he said were shouting jihadist slogans. In a separate incident, a gang in the northwestern state of Katsina kidnapped at least 5 people as they prepared for a church service. Father Archie was the chairperson of the local branch of the Christian Association of Nigeria, CAN, which condemned his killing and expressed concern about a recent spate of attacks on Christians. Niger State Governor Alhaji Sani Bello Abubakar condemned the attack and termed it ungodly and inhumane, and ordered local security forces to pursue the assailants. Nigeria has been battling militant Islamist group Boko Haram and its offshoots for more than a decade now. Its fighters have targeted both Christians and Muslims in different times. And then we go over to the UK in matters related to Rwanda. A British charity will today morning seek permission from the High Court in London to appeal against a controversial government plan to send some asylum seekers to Rwanda. Asylum Aid will argue that the court erred in its ruling in December that the scheme was lawful, and will challenge the judgment that the country is a safe destination for migrants. If the court allows the charity's appeal, any flights under the scheme will be further delayed. The Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Home Secretary Suella Braverman have made curbing immigration via the English Channel a political priority. In December, the High Court upheld the country's decision and curtailed the rights of migrants to challenge decisions put them on a plane. And then we head over to Uganda, and President Yoweri Museveni over the weekend called for a ban on overseas travel by members of parliament and civil servants to save money for priority areas. He made the remarks while commissioning facilities at Uganda Petroleum Institute, Kigumba, where the country intends to train local experts in oil exploration. Uganda hopes to start pumping millions of barrels of oil from 2025 from its vast oil reserves, but the president was unimpressed that the training institute was still incomplete due to lack of funds. The president also suggested a freeze of all allowances, according to local news Daily Monitor. A $3.5 billion crude oil pipeline that will connect Uganda's oil fields to port in neighboring Tanzania has been opposed by climate activists. The two East African countries say their priority is economic development. Then we go to South Africa, where President Cyril Ramaphosa has cancelled plans to attend the World Economic Forum in Davos over the ongoing energy crisis in his country. His spokesperson has confirmed that the country is facing its biggest ever power crisis, with people experiencing rolling blackouts of up to 6 hours a day. Mr. Ramaphosa was due to lead a government delegation to the event, the news agency reported, but he will instead hold talks with leaders of political parties and the state-run power company Eskom, said presidential spokesperson Vincent Mangwenya. And then in matters Ethiopia and the recently mediated conflict, the African Union mediator in Ethiopia's Tigray conflict, Olusegun Obasanjo, has told the Financial Times that up to 600,000 people may have died in the 2-year war. In an interview with the paper, Mr. Obasanjo said the number of the dead was around 600,000. The number of the people who died in the conflict is difficult to verify. Researchers have previously estimated the deaths to be in the hundreds of thousands. On Sunday, the Financial Times quoted the head of Ethiopia's Human Rights Commission, Daniel Bekele, as saying the estimates given by all sides needed to be treated with caution, as it was impossible to know the full number of casualties. The conflict started in November 2020 when Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed ordered a military offensive against regional forces in Tigray, which he said was a response to an attack on a military base housing government troops. Last November, the Ethiopian government and Tigray rebels signed a ceasefire agreement ending the 2-year war. And then he head over to Mali, and 4 gendarmes were killed and 3 others injured on Sunday after being ambushed in western Mali, a region prone to jihadist attacks, the paramilitary police have said. 2 police vehicles were torched and 2 others equipped with machine guns were captured by the assailants during the attack in Kualo, the force said. 2 of the assailants were killed and others taken to prison. The gendarmerie did not say who was responsible for the attack, but police, troops and Malian state targets are regularly hit by jihadist groups. Mali has been in the throes of a nearly 11-year security crisis triggered by a regional revolt in the north that developed into a full-blown jihadist insurgency. Thousands have died, hundreds of thousands have fled their homes, and devastating economic damage has been inflicted to one of the world's poorest countries. And we head over to Somalia. Authorities in Somalia say they have seized a weapons cache allegedly buried by Al-Shabaab militants at a house in the Somali capital Mogadishu during a joint operation. A statement from the country's National Intelligence and Security Agency, or NISA, said on Saturday that a joint elite team from Somalia's intelligence agency and Mogadishu Regional Police carried out an operation in the capital Mogadishu on Friday and led the seizure of weapons allegedly buried by Al-Shabaab militants. The brief statement did not give further details of the seized weapons, but did say that during the operation, security forces arrested a suspected Al-Shabaab member from the raided house in the Dakenli district and that an investigation was underway. And the latest from Congo, a bomb killed at least 10 people and wounded 39 others as it ripped through a church in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo on Sunday in an attack blamed on suspected Islamists. A Congolese military spokesperson, Anthony Mwalushai, said the terrorist act happened in a Pentecostal church in North Kivu province, Akasindi, a town on the border with Uganda. The explosion killed at least 10 people and wounded 39, he added, revising up the initial death toll of 5. Both tolls were provincial, the spokesperson said. But the spokesperson for Uganda's military operation in the DRC, Bilal Katamba, said this Sunday evening that 16 people had been killed in the blast and 20 were wounded. The DRC's communication ministry said on social media that the attack was apparently carried out by the Allied Democratic Forces, ADF, which the Islamic State group claims as its affiliate in Central Africa. The ADF is one of the deadliest of the more than 120 armed groups in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, many of them the legacy of regional wars that flared at the turn of the century. It has been accused of slaughtering thousands of Congolese civilians and carrying out bomb attacks in Uganda. The ADF operatives have also planted bombs in towns in North Kivu in the past. We head over to Zimbabwe. And riot police stormed the home of a Zimbabwean opposition member of parliament on the outskirts of Harare on Saturday, arresting him and 24 others who were holding a party meeting, the party and authorities have said. Costa Machingauta, his wife and 17-year-old daughter were beaten by police at their home in the suburb Mudiriro, south of Harare, before being taken away, officials on the main opposition Citizens Coalition of Change (CCC) has said. Police say the meeting was unauthorized and those arrested will be charged with breaching public order. Opposition parties and rights organizations have recently denounced an increased crackdown ahead of this year's general elections. CCC Spokesperson Fadzai Mahere accused the ruling ZANU-PF party of using the police against political opponents. A large number of police officers laid siege to Machingauta's house on Saturday before violently breaking up the meeting, Mahere said, adding that another influential CCC member of parliament, Amos Shibaya, was also arrested. And the Tanzanian opposition leader and former presidential candidate Tundu Lissu says he plans to return home this month from exile in Europe after the government lifted a ban on political rallies. The ban imposed by former President the late John Magufuli in 2016 allowed only elected politicians to conduct rallies in their constituencies. Lissu, a former politician, left the country for treatment abroad after he was shot 16 times by unknown gunmen in September 2017. He returned for a few months in 2020 to challenge Magufuli in a presidential election and took 13% of the votes, but his Chadema party rejected the outcome over claims of widespread irregularities. President Samia Suluhu Hassan lifted the 6.5-year-old ban on political rallies last week as part of her reconciliation strategy after taking over the presidency in March 2021, following the death of Magufuli. And we head over back to Uganda, but something that happened in Kenya. Uganda's High Commissioner to Kenya and Seychelles, Dr. Hassan Waswa Galiwango, has died in Nairobi. Rebecca Gadaga, Uganda's first Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of EAC, confirmed on Monday. Dr. Galiwango had been admitted at the Nairobi hospital where he died. Dr. Galiwango was appointed High Commissioner in October 2020 to replace Phoebe Otala, who had left office to contest for a political seat back home. However, Ms. Otala protested his appointment and declined to hand over the post, arguing that she had not been recalled. Dr. Galiwango later presented his credentials to then President Uhuru Kenyatta on March 3, 2021. Before his appointment as High Commissioner, Dr. Galiwango had been a long-serving Director of Finance and Administration at the National Resistance Movement NRM Secretariat. Head over to South Sudan, and the President's Advisor on Security Affairs has directed the Technical Committee to ensure that the remaining unified forces to move to training camps within 3 weeks to kickstart the second phase of the graduation forces. Tut Gatluak Manime made the call during the graduation of 3,000 peace soldiers of Unity State capital Bentui on Saturday. The forces, comprising police officers, prison officers and civil defense personnel, are the last batch of the 50,000 troops that had been graduating since August 2022. The 2018 peace agreement provides for training, graduation and the deployment of the 83,000 unified forces from the various peace parties across the country. The unified forces from Unity State graduated without firearms. Speaking during the graduation ceremony, the Presidential Advisor on Security Affairs said the force will be deployed to conflict hotspot areas across the country. Tut Gatluak said the second phase of the graduation will start in 20 days. In October last year, the presidency recommended the deployment of recently graduated forces mainly to conflict-affected areas in the country. And then we head over back to South Africa, and a South African court has halted a private prosecution against President Cyril Ramaphosa, initiated by former President Jacob Zuma. Mr. Ramaphosa had gone to court to try and stop the effort. Mr. Zuma accuses the president of failing to act against a state prosecutor and a journalist for allegedly disclosing his confidential medical records. The interim judgment to halt Mr. Ramaphosa's prosecution now means he will not stand in the dock as an accused person. And then we end from Nigeria, and the Proscribed Indigenous People of Biafra, IPOB, has rejected the offer of the governor of Anambra State, Professor Chukwuma Soludo, to stand as surety for its leader, Nnamdi KANU, to be released, saying the federal government has breached the court order of its own court. While welcoming the call by Soludo to release KANU unconditionally, the group said the call was belated, coming 3 months after the Court of Appeal discharged and acquitted its leader. It added that the governor should rather call on the federal government to respect its own court and grant KANU its freedom. This was contained in a statement by the Media and Publicity Secretary of IPOB, Emma Powerful, made available to the media in a reaction to Soludo's appeal to the federal government to release the detained IPOB leader to him. IPOB noted that its leader no longer had any form of indictment or pending charge that required a surety, hence the issue of bail did not arise. And that is the latest news from across the continent of Africa. Well, Nigeria's government is notorious of not respecting, court orders, and the issue with Nnamdi Kanu, I think, is a good example of that, and some other cases before. So this governor had said, you know what, I can stand as surety. Then Anambra State Professor Chukwuma, the governor of Anambra State, Professor Chukwuma Soludo, has said, I can stand as surety so that you're able to release KANU. But the IPOB is saying, there are no charges. As far as we know, the court has acquitted him of some of these charges, and so there's no need for any surety. What needs to be done is for the security forces to release KANU, something that has not been done. So this statement by IPOB Secretary says that we welcome the call for Governor of Anambra State for the unconditional release of our leader Nnamdi Kanu, but the said call for the unconditional release of our leader is belated and coming 3 months and 1 day after the Court of Appeal, Abuja Judicial Division, in its erudite judgment delivered on the 13th day of October 2022, discharged and acquitted the leader of the IPOB and all the remaining 8 counts amended charge preferred against him. So the court consequently directed for his unconditional release in the landmark judgment. It further prohibited the federal government of Nigeria from further detaining our leader or even presenting him for trial on any indictment or offense whatsoever before any court in Nigeria. It is important, the letter continues, therefore, to clarify that our leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, has no form of indictment or even charge pending against him today before any court by authority of this judgment. The issue of granting bail or otherwise that does not arise by any stretch of consideration or imagination, because it is the federal government that is today in breach of this order of Superior Court of competent jurisdiction. And the letter continues. I will not read the whole of it. So what they're saying is, as much as this person is the governor for Anambra State, Charles Soludo, is willing to stand as surety, but they're saying Nnamdi Kanu has been acquitted of all of these charges, so the issue of surety is not a conversation that should be had right now. Instead, what the government needs to ensure happens is the unconditional release, and that is in line with the judgment from the court of Nnamdi Kanu. But as I've said, there are several instances where the government of Nigeria has not been known to respect even its own courts' decisions, like in the case of Nnamdi Kanu and others before. So it's acting with a lot of impunity and disregard of the law. So if you're accusing Nnamdi Kanu of going against the law and doing things that are not in harmony with what the Constitution of Nigeria says, and then he finds himself in Nigeria, he was taken from Kenya, and even in the way that he was taken from Kenya was not in line with the international law. If you want to get somebody from another country, then there are proper procedures to be followed. So you breached the law in that regard. Now he is in Nigeria. So you're accusing him of breaking the law, of violating parts of the law. You take him to court, you prefer all these charges. Your competent court goes through all these charges, holds a trial, and he's acquitted of all these charges. So what happens now? So if he has been found not guilty of these charges that were preferred against him, then that means you have to release him. So you can't accuse Nnamdi Kanu of violating the law, then you take him through a judicial process, he's acquitted, and then you decide that you're going to violate the law yourself. The government of Nigeria, you have to decide, are you going to charge somebody of violating the law and then you go ahead and do the same thing? I think if you decide to follow the law, then we have to follow the law to the latter. But if you decide you're going to apply the rules of the jungle, then that is what you pick and choose. You can't just mix and match the law and use it however and whichever way you feel it serves your purpose, even when you are outrightly violating the same law that you were accusing Nnamdi Kanu of violating. You charged him, you preferred charges against him, and you took him to court, and the court made that decision. So as a government that is operating under a constitution, then you are obligated to respect the findings and to respect, what the courts decided on this case. But I guess that is not how the law works in Nigeria, I suppose. Perhaps there are two sets of laws. I don't know, but that is in a complete violation of the law in Nigeria, I believe, and it just violates all the Nigerian law, the international law. And so President Buhari, you have to decide, does Nigeria operate within the precepts of the law? Then if that is the case, then your government must respect anything that comes from its own courts. They are the custodians of the law, the judiciary. Okay, so if that is a decision that has been made, then you have no choice but to respect that. But if you choose not to respect that, then you're setting a very dangerous precedent, and you're setting grounds for impunity, and that is what we have been seeing happening there. So hopefully that is something that I don't think President Buhari will solve this matter. I don't think Nnamdi Kanu issue will end now. Maybe if the next government comes in, perhaps we'll see this case being handled differently. But I think President Buhari and his government, they're not really interested to look at the facts, to look at whatever it is, even their own court, his own court is saying. So maybe the new dispensation will have a different respect for the rule of law. Yeah, respect for the rule of law, and a way of doing things differently, hopefully. And maybe that case will take a different trajectory. Now, the issue of insecurity in South Sudan has really gone up. And the Presidential Advisor on Security Affairs has directed the technical committee to ensure that the remaining unified forces to move to training camps. So they've not really been able to graduate all these soldiers that had been training in these camps. So the forces comprising police officers, and civil defense and personnel are the last batch of the 50,000. So the initial number that was contained in the 2018 Revitalized Peace Agreement, the country was supposed to have a total of 83,000 strong force. But so far, I think they've been able to target about 50,000, and part of that have graduated, but the other they're yet to graduate. So there's a batch of 3,000 that graduated over the weekend, and they graduated without firearms. We know South Sudan is under arms embargo, so there's scarcity of firearms there. and the insecurity is on an high time rise, an all-time high right now. So, and this has been because of some communal and ethnical balkanization, has a background of that, and has been a cause of concern. And outside of this number of troops that we see graduate from South Sudan, we have to remember also UNIMIS, that is the United Nations mission in South Sudan, has about close to 20,000 personnel in South Sudan. And their mandate, sometimes you wonder, what is it that they do there in South Sudan? These missions, what are they doing in South Sudan? What are they doing in the Democratic Republic of Congo? And why are we seeing an increase in insecurity while they are there? So South Sudan UNIMIS, which was initially established in July in 2011 after the war broke out, and it was established for a period of 1 year. So they were hoping after 1 year the war would have subsided. The war did not subside, and many years later the insecurity still continues. And so its mandate, they've kept renewing its mandate, and it was formed and established under Security Council Resolution 1996, that is in 2011, with the intent to renew the further periods as needed. Now, the civilian, police, and military personnel have been drawn from 73 countries across the world, and UNIMIS has almost 20,000 peacekeepers that serve under the United Nations mission in South Sudan. So you wonder, with all these soldiers, over 20,000 of them, why do we still not have peace in South Sudan? Why are we having civilians being attacked in several instances? Why are we seeing a rise in communal violence? Why are these peacekeepers not going to these areas and act as buffers against these communities that are fighting, or these warring sides, and just make sure that civilians are safe? So UNIMIS has a key 4 mandates in South Sudan, and one of the key mandates is to protect the lives of the civilians. And peacekeepers actively patrol in communities across the country to deter violence. That is what they're supposed to be doing. But from what we are seeing and the reports that we've been receiving and the violence that we've been seeing in South Sudan, obviously they're failing in this very key mandate. The next mandate is creating conditions conducive to the delivery of humanitarian assistance. Well, somehow they get to do that. Okay, so the UNIMIS peacekeepers work to ensure that humanitarian aid such as food, clean water, shelter, and healthcare reaches millions of the people in need across South Sudan. So to some good extent, I think they do that. The other mandate is supporting the implementation of the revitalized agreement and the peace process. Now, the mission is committed to help build durable peace in South Sudan. It does this by working as an impartial partner at the national and subnational level with political, religious, traditional community leaders, as well as with communities and individuals. UNIMIS uses its good offices to support the implementation of the peace agreement. Now, in diplomacy, the good offices means that UNIMIS is a party that brings the warring sides together, but it does not participate in the mediation. It just provides for a safe space where all parties can come and talk the things out, but it does not directly get involved in the mediation. So that is what the good offices mean. So UNIMIS provides good offices to the warring parties in South Sudan, and this helps in support the implementation of the peace agreement through the provision of advice and technical assistance. I don't know how well they are doing as far as this mandate is concerned. Not many aspects of this revitalized peace agreement have been implemented. So can they push the parties? Maybe not. So they just wait until Salva Kiir, Riek Machar, and other stakeholders are willing to take the next step or to implement the next aspect of this agreement, that they come in and perhaps provide the good offices, or perhaps facilitate with whatever it is that they may need, I guess, because they really cannot coerce this leadership or this stakeholders in South Sudan to really implement some of these very important aspects. And the last and also very important mandate of UNMISS in South Sudan is monitoring and investigating human rights. So the mission monitors, investigates, verifies, and reports on violations and abuses of human rights and international humanitarian law, including those that may amount to crimes or crimes against humanity. And that's why we get a lot of reports being presented to the United Nations Security Council from South Sudan, because part of the UNMISS's work is to make sure that they monitor and they investigate and they file and document whatever it is that is going on in South Sudan and presenting it to the United Nations. So all these 4 mandates by UNMISS, a lot, maybe the last one, we keep seeing reports from South Sudan, so perhaps they do very good on that. But the protection of civilians, this is a place I'm having trouble with, because we don't see a lot of that happening. Matter of fact, you find that civilians are being attacked in very areas that are in close proximity to where the UNMISS is based. And a lot of times we've seen the civilians turn against them and start fighting them because they don't feel safe even being close to these UNMISS forces. So there has been some arguments that perhaps this mandate needs to be, the scope needs to be enlarged, and perhaps they need also to be focusing on other things. But it is a peacekeeping mission. It is a peacekeeping mission and a peace building mission at the same time. So there's nothing much it can do, but I think it can act as a buffer zone, because if you were supposed to identify areas where there's a conflict and make sure that you offer protection in these areas, and these communal fightings that we've seen on the rise in South Sudan will not be really happening if UNMISS was really doing its job. And we have close to 20,000 peacekeeping personnel in South Sudan. Can you imagine that? We have 18,000 in the Democratic Republic of Congo, 16,000 are soldiers, and the other ones help in other areas. In South Sudan, we have close to 20,000, and the peace has refused to come. So what is the mandate? What is the purpose? I've read through, the mandate of UNMISS, but can it be changed so that we can get more tangible results as far as even protecting the lives of the civilians is concerned, at least? Because even that, UNMISS has failed. So, all right. So now the presidential advisor is saying that they need more soldiers to graduate so that they can go and address the issue of insecurity. I'm just thinking, in the meantime, UNMISS could be helping in this. They're not just there having these hefty, salaries under United Nations, and yet they cannot do even the basic of what they're supposed to be doing there, protecting the lives of the civilians. I think that is something that needs to be reviewed and it needs to be talked about. Okay, so I think I will end this conversation here this afternoon with the Tanzanian opposition leader and former presidential candidate Tundu Lissu, saying that he's planning to come back to Tanzania. Remember, he went into exile in 2017, because he was shot. He was shot 16 times. He almost died. He was brought here in Nairobi for treatment, and then he disappeared from the country. He later returned for a few months in 2020 to challenge Magufuli in the re-election, and then disappeared. He got about 13% of the votes, and his party protested that the elections were not done in a way that was free, fair, and verifiable. So there was widespread irregularities. That is what they said. And so he feared for his life, so he has been in abroad for now quite some time. But after President Samia Suluhu lifted the 6.5-year ban on political rallies, She did that last week, so he's planning to come back home and see how he can continue with the I don't know, his opposition activities. Magufuli on this ban had only the ban imposed by former President Magufuli in 2016 allowed only elected politicians to conduct rallies in their constituency. So you could not even go anywhere else in the country. If you want to conduct a rally, you conduct it from where you've been elected. So if you're not an elected leader, so you're not allowed to conduct any political rally. Magufuli was something else. But anyway, a lot of these things that he did and decisions that he made, we're seeing the current President Samia Suluhu Hassan, turning them around. Maybe it's for the better. Maybe it's just for us, Tanzania to catch up with the rest of the world as far as progress in the democratic sphere is concerned, and how far they're willing to go to see that this happens fully. Well, I guess that is something that we'll just wait and see. All right, I want to thank you so much for your time this afternoon. This has been Diaspora Dispatches. My name is Miriam Ogutu, and you have the rest of your day. Bye-bye.